أَسْكِنُوهُنَّ مِنْ حَيْثُ سَكَنْتُمْ. Keep them stationed, keep them at home, in the same place where you live. Min wujdikum, in whatever you found, meaning, so, min wujdikum, whatever's found with you, from wujdan. That's the masdar. What this means is, keep them at home and don't say, you go to the cellar, because we're divorced now, I have a basement, and I'll throw a sheet down, you can just lay it down on the dirt and just sleep over there. Because we're no longer officially married, or we're in this period in the middle, so that bedroom's no longer for you. No. Min haythu sakantum, exactly where you live, in whatever you found. Now imagine the guy's not very rich. He doesn't have a 3-bedroom house, 2-bedroom house, 5-bedroom house. He's got 1-bedroom apartment. And she's in the iddah period, and 1 room is taken up by the children. And he doesn't have 2 beds, he's got 1 bed. He's got 1 bed. So now they got 2 blankets and they're sleeping like back to each other. How long before they ease up? How long? And then she's like, oh, okay. And he just turned around and he goes, ah. She just goes, ah. You want some water or something? That's it. This is the wisdom of Allah. Keep them where you are. Min haythu sakantum. So that tensions go away. وَلَا تُضَرُّوهُنَّ. And don't harm them. لِتُضَيِّقُوا عَلَيْهِنَّ. So you can make life tight around them. ضَيَّقَ is to make things tight for somebody, to squeeze somebody. Meaning the guy is a total jerk. He wants to keep her, but he wants to make her life miserable before he lets her go, like I was mentioning before. So what does he do? He says, yeah, she can stay where I stay, but I'm going to make sure that her life becomes so miserable in these few months that after these months are done, she leaves on her own. But if somebody comes and asks me, why'd you kick her out? I'm going to say, no, she left on her own. Ask her. She left. I didn't kick her out. But you made life so intolerable for her that she left. Allah says, don't play that game. لِتُضَيِّقُوا عَلَيْهِنَّ وَإِن كُنَّ أُولَاتُ حَمْلٍ. And if they were in fact carrying children, they were pregnant, فَأَنْفِقُوا عَلَيْهِنَّ حَتَّى يَضَعْنَ. Then spend on them until they bear the child. حَمْلَهُنَّ. Until they drop their load, meaning they bear the child. فَإِنْ أَرْضَعْنَ لَكُمْ. And if they're breastfeeding for you now, so you're no longer married. Once the child is delivered, the divorce is complete. So you're no longer married. So now if they're going to feed your child, then this is a service out of their way that they're providing for you. Now think naturally in the natural world. A mother feeding her child is not a favor to anybody else. That's an act of the mother to her child. She doesn't get paid for that. But Islam provided a social security to divorced women to the point where even that most natural of acts, like women that start getting milk, if they don't feed their child, they have pain. Like they have to feed their child, And Allah says, if they do feed your child, then you have to pay them. فَآتُوهُنَّ أُجُورَهُنَّ. Pay them then. Because that's your child. And you're still responsible for his feeding. Because as head of the household, you're responsible for the finances, which includes feeding. And even if she's feeding him naturally, that doesn't take away from the fact that was your financial responsibility. So since the food is coming from her body, you will pay her. You have to pay her money for feeding. وَأْتَمِرُوا بَيْنَكُمْ. Now, give them their compensation and come to a decision among yourselves. وَأْتَمِرُوا بَيْنَكُمْ. Usually, i'timar is used for, a tough decision. For amr. Ta'amara is to plot or to plan something where 2 parties have already come to an agreement before they even met. I'tamara, however, is there's a back and forth before the decision is reached. So ifti'al versus tafa'ul, there's a little difference in the root amr, right? Allah adds bi ma'ruf. When you're negotiating, what should you be paid? Well, for every day that I feed this child, I want $1,000. I want $2,000 per day. That's what I want. So she comes up with a ridiculous figure. Or he says, okay, a quarter for every month. I'll give you like 25 cents because I'm feeling a little generous this month. So for 4 months, I'll give you a whole shiny new dollar. Crisp from the bank. We'll do that. وَإِن تَعَاسَرْتُمْ. If you're giving each other a hard time, فَمْعُسْرٍ. If when the negotiations are happening and you're giving each other a hard time, you're not able to come to some kind of agreement, فَسَتُرْضِعُ لَهُ أُخْرَى. Then somebody else will provide. Somebody else will provide the milk for him. Meaning you'll have to find a wet nurse or somebody else. If you can't work with her, if you can't meet her demands, and you're giving each other a hard time, then outsource it. That's it. That's how it's going to have to be. لِيُنْفِقْ ذُو سَعَةٍ مِّن سَعَتِهِ. So that the one who has means should spend out of his means. وَمَنْ قُدِرَ عَلَيْهِ رِزْقُهُ فَلْيُنْفِقْ مِمَّا آتَاهُ اللَّهُ. And whoever's finances have been tightened, whoever Allah has, put a calculation on his rizq, means Allah has put a limit on his rizq. You see, on the one hand, يَرْزُقُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا يَحْتَسِبْ. إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَرْزُقُ مَنْ يَشَاءُ بِغَيْرِ حِسَابٍ. Without any calculation, without any audit. On the other hand, when things get tight, Allah says his rizq has been made tightened. قُدِرَ عَلَيْهِ رِزْقُهُ. His rizq has been calculated, meaning restricted. فَلْيُنْفِقْ. Then he should spend مِمَّا آتَاهُ اللَّهُ. From whatever Allah has given him. لَا يُكَلِّفُ اللَّهُ نَفْسًا إِلَّا مَا أَتَاهَا. Allah has not given anybody loaded anybody with a burden except for what He gave them. إِلَّا مَا أَتَاهَا, meaning what they've been given. سَيَجْعَلُ اللَّهُ بَعْدَ عُسْرٍ يُسْرًا. Allah will make, after the difficult time, He will produce a time of ease. This also means after the divorce is done and life is hard, Allah will find a way to make life easy again. And Allah has promised that to those who get divorced among the believing community, if they maintain Allah's taqwa, that their life will become easier. From the Indo-Pak subcontinent, for instance, divorce in the Hindu tradition is worse than death. So your husband leaving you you're worthless. You're worthless. As a woman, you're worthless. And because Muslims, when we came to India, we unfortunately took on some practices of Hindu mythology and culture, and we brought them into our family life, lifestyles. And part of that was, if a woman gets divorced, she is black, and she can't even hang out with girls that aren't married because the virus might spread. Like she's completely ostracized from community. It's the most humiliating thing to be divorced. It's this horrible, horrible thing. This is one extreme. I'll share with you another extreme. In the other extreme, there are communities in the United States that came to Islam maybe decades ago, not centuries ago, decades ago. And their lifestyle was very Western before they came to Islam. And what I mean by a Western lifestyle is there was a lot of dating and a lot of breaking up. Right? So men and women are dating, they couple of months, get tired of each other, they break up, new relationship, and they have lots of relationships. And in those communities, divorce is as easy as breaking up. You get into a fight, I'm breaking up with you, you get into one argument, and what? Divorce is done. And so you'll have this crazy situation where divorce is as common as like sneezing. And it's no big deal. So what? And on the other hand, you have divorce, which is like the Black Plague. It's death. There's a healthy balance in between. Divorce is not the end of somebody's life. They're still human beings. And just because they got divorced doesn't mean they were bad people. Getting divorced is not committing a crime. And you don't know the situation. They could be the abuser, they could be the abused, and it could be neither was the abuser. And it could be both were the abuser. You don't know. So sure, if somebody's looking to get married to somebody who's previously divorced, by the way, the majority of the Prophet's wives, save Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, previously divorced. Allah's Messenger in His wisdom left that sunnah because He knew that is going to be a need of the ummah. That's going to be a need. Those women should not be blacklisted. Those women should not be, kept to the sides. So, if that's going to happen, we have to get over that stigma. We have to accept that as a reality. And even if Sahaba can get divorced, that means righteousness has nothing to do with it. Iman has nothing to do with it. Sometimes people just aren't compatible. In our times, mashallah, righteousness has a lot to do with it. You have messed up people pretending to be righteous, getting married to a good girl, or vice versa, and then only after marriage you find out you're married to a monster. And then you get divorced, and you get divorced within 2 months, 3 months. I blame parents more in that situation than anybody else, and I also blame, stupid youth who don't do a proper investigation or are too goo-goo gaga-eyed to actually think about what they're getting into, they're not dating somebody. Marriage is not the Islamic equivalent of dating, halal dating. It's not. Marriage is starting a family. You have to investigate. Who is this person? How are they raised? What are their attitudes towards their own parents? That'll tell you a lot about what kind of family values they have. How do they take care of their siblings? How selfish are they? How responsible are they? Have they worked before? The guy, has he worked before? A day in his life. Has he worked? Where has he worked? Who are his friends? Who does he hang out with? What are his hobbies? And don't just email the guy and say, what's your favorite color? Me too, I love purple also. No. Who cares? You could be colorblind. But it's character you have to look for. Character testimony. And that's at the heart of it. When that doesn't happen, of course divorce is going to happen. Divorce is so common in the Muslim community now. And then we've created this vicious impression of what divorce is, right? So there are girls, Western raised, went to high school in America, went to college in America, but Muslim family, got married, and they're in this nasty relationship, and they're scared to get divorced because what are my parents going to say? Even though they're in an abusive relationship. Because we closed the door that Allah opened. Allah says, وَمَنْ يَتَّقِ اللَّهِ يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مَخْرَجًا. If the marriage is going to produce fitna, it's going to produce abuse, it's going to produce sin, then you're better off without each other. And if you think you can change your ways, well, Allah gave you a period to get your stuff sorted out. And if you've gone through 2 of those cycles and you can't sort things out, then you know what? Just move on with life. That's it. This is not something I say lightly. I don't endorse divorce. Nobody likes divorce. But if we're living in a time where abuse in marriages is so rampant, then we have to have a mature conversation. We really, the ummah needs one. وَكَأَيٍّ مِّن قَرْيَةٍ عَتَتْ عَنْ أَمْرِ رَبِّهَا وَرُسُولِهِ. SubhanAllah. How many towns have there been that were arrogant, and out of their arrogance they disobeyed? Ata, to disobey out of pride. Who out of pride disobeyed the command of their master and their messengers and his messengers. Allah brings, and فَحَاسَبْنَاهَا حِسَابًا شَدِيدًا. Then we brought them to account with an intense audit. وَعَذَّبْنَاهَا عَذَابًا نُكْرًا. And we tortured them with an unknown kind of punishment, and an evil, unfamiliar punishment. They didn't even know what that was. Allah is talking about the destruction of towns like He talks about in Makki Quran. Why in the middle of a surah of divorce? Nations are being destroyed. Nations are being destroyed because of arrogant disobedience. That's the crime here. Atat an amri rabbiha. Underline those words and you understand why it's being mentioned. Entire nations were annihilated because of the attitude you are showing without taqwa and without tawakkul in your divorce process. You realize what you're doing.